18,000 feet over California, the controls go dead. The yoke fights back. The horizon snaps vertical, then inverts. The P-38 Lightning tumbles through the sky like a leaf in a hurricane. An 18-year-old cadet has 10 seconds to live, unless the spin itself holds the answer. February 1943. The desert wind off Muroc Dry Lake tastes like chalk and gasoline. Rows of twin-boom fighters shimmer in the heat, their contra-rotating propellers ticking as they cool. Lockheed's P-38 Lightning is the most distinctive silhouette in the Army Air Force's inventory, a twin-engine interceptor built for speed and altitude. Two Allison V-17-10 engines mounted on elongated booms, central nacelle housing the cockpit and armament, tricycle landing gear that makes it look like it belongs in the future, not 1943. But pilots are dying in it. Training accidents climb every month. The Lightning spins without warning. Once it starts tumbling, standard recovery procedures fail. Pull back on the yoke and add opposite rudder, the textbook method drilled into every cadet since the Great War, does nothing. Sometimes it accelerates the death spiral. Instructors tell cadets to bail out if the spin lasts more than 2 rotations. Better a parachute landing than auguring into the Mojave at terminal velocity. The war is expanding faster than doctrine can adapt. Fighter production outpaces pilot training. New aircraft arrive with handling quirks no one fully understands. The P-38 came online so fast that flight envelopes remain partially uncharted. Lockheed engineers know the twin-boom configuration creates asymmetric thrust under certain conditions. They know compressibility becomes an issue in high-speed dives. But spin dynamics in a twin-engine fighter are a frontier no one has fully mapped. At Muroc Army Airfield, cadets rotate through advanced fighter training. Most arrive with fewer than 200 flight hours. They learn gunnery, formation flying, and high-altitude intercepts. The P-38 demands finesse. Its counter-rotating props eliminate torque, but introduce complexity. Engine-out procedures require immediate correction or the aircraft yaws into a flat spin. Cadets practice single-engine landings until muscle memory overrides panic. Some wash out. A few die. The mechanics know something the briefing rooms do not. On the flight line, crew chiefs compare notes after every incident. They see patterns in wreckage reports. Spin entries happen during aggressive maneuvering. Hard pulls at low airspeed, snap rolls with uncoordinated rudder input. Once inverted, the aircraft resists all corrective action. One crew chief mentions it to a flight instructor. The instructor shrugs. Doctrine says, bail out. Doctrine is written in blood and physics. No one questions it. If you want more such stories, like and subscribe so these lives aren't forgotten. His name was Ralph Hofer, born in Salem, Missouri in 1924. A farm kid with steady hands and a mind wired for systems. He learned to drive a tractor at 9, rebuilding the carburetor when it flooded. By 14, he could strip an engine and diagnose misfires by sound alone. His father ran a modest farm that survived the Depression through frugality and repair skills. Ralph inherited both. School came easy, math especially. He saw equations as puzzles, problems with knowable solutions. His physics teacher noted his intuition for forces, leverage, momentum, friction. Ralph didn't memorize formulas. He understood why they worked. When a neighbor's truck lost its brakes, Ralph rigged a temporary hydraulic bypass using a bicycle pump and copper tubing. It held long enough to get the truck home. He enlisted 3 weeks after Pearl Harbor. Too young at 17, but his birth certificate was conveniently vague. The recruiter took one look at his build, lean, farm strong, and his test scores, and stamped the papers. Ralph wanted to be a pilot, not for glory. He wanted to understand how flight worked from the inside. Ground school fascinated him. Aerodynamics, Bernoulli's principle. How a wing generates lift by accelerating air across an asymmetric surface. He sketched diagrams in the margins of his manual, annotating stall angles and pressure differentials. Primary training took place in Stearman biplots, fabric wings, and open cockpits. Ralph soloed after 7 hours. His instructor noted his smoothness on the controls, his ability to feel the aircraft through vibration and sound. He flew by instinct, but instinct grounded in mechanical logic. In formation flying, he held position without drift. During aerobatics, he managed energy with precision, converting altitude into speed, and back again, without wasting momentum. Advanced training brought him to Muroc and the P-38. The Lightning was a different species. Twice the weight, twice the power, twice the complexity. Ralph studied it the way he once studied tractor engines. He walked the flight line before dawn, watching mechanics service the Allisons. He asked about turbocharger operation, coolant flow, and magneto timing. Crew chiefs liked him because he listened. Most cadets treated mechanics as stagehands. Ralph understood they knew the aircraft in ways pilots never would. He flew his first P-38 sortie on a cold January morning. The takeoff run felt eternal. The nose stayed high, blocking forward visibility until the tricycle gear lifted. Then the desert dropped away, and the twin Allisons sang in harmony. Ralph felt the airframe's stiffness, the way it resisted roll inputs at low speed. He felt the slight yaw when throttling up one engine. He internalized the feedback, building a mental map of how the Lightning responded to control inputs across its flight envelope. But no one had taught him what to do when that envelope collapsed. The problem wasn't new, it was structural. The P-38's twin-boom design created aerodynamic asymmetry that amplified mistakes. In a single-engine fighter, a spin is violent but predictable. The aircraft rotates around a vertical axis, nose down, one wing stalled. Recovery is taught in primary training. Reduce power, neutralize ailerons, apply opposite rudder to stop rotation, push the yoke forward to break the stall, wait for airspeed to build, level out. But the P-38 defied this logic. Its center of gravity sat between two engines, far from the central nacelle. In a spin, one boom rose while the other fell, creating a tumbling motion that resisted conventional inputs. The rudder lost authority as airflow separated. The elevators, mounted on the central nacelle, were shielded by the spinning airframe. Standard recovery technique, opposite rudder and forward stick, sometimes made it worse. Pilots would add full opposite rudder, and the aircraft would transition into an inverted flat spin. Unrecoverable. Fatal. Lockheed engineers knew about it. They issued handling guidance. Avoid low-speed maneuvering below 10,000 feet. Never pull more than 4 Gs below 250 indicated airspeed. If a spin develops, immediately reduce power to both engines and deploy flaps if altitude permits. If recovery doesn't begin within 3 seconds, bail out. The engineers were honest. They didn't fully understand the spin dynamics. Wind tunnel data suggested the twin booms created a vortex interaction that locked the aircraft into rotation. The solution was don't spin it. But combat doesn't allow that luxury. Over New Guinea and North Africa, P-38 pilots tangled with Zeros and Messerschmitts in turning fights. The Lightning had speed and firepower, but it couldn't turn with a Zero. Pilots who tried, who hauled back on the yoke at low airspeed to get guns on target, often entered spins. Some recovered, many didn't. After-action reports mentioned it cautiously. Aircraft lost during combat maneuvering. Cause undetermined. Witnesses reported seeing the P-38 tumbling, then a streamer of smoke. No parachute. Training commands circulated the warnings. Spin avoidance became doctrine. Instructors drilled it into cadets. Do not exceed the Lightning's turn envelope. Do not yank and bank at low airspeed. If you find yourself in a spin, bail out. The aircraft is expendable. You are not. It was sound advice, backed by dozens of fatal accidents. But it also meant the P-38 couldn't be flown to its theoretical limits. Its turn performance was constrained by fear as much as physics. Some cadets ignored the warnings, young men who believed skill could overcome design. A few tried to fight their way out of spins using brute force. Full aileron against the rotation, full throttle on one engine to create asymmetric thrust. These improvised techniques occasionally worked. More often, they did not. Crash investigators found wreckage scattered across square miles, the impact force so great that identification required dental records. Ralph Hofer read the incident reports. He saw the pattern. Spins happened during aggressive turns, usually in the training area during mock dogfights. Pilots pulled hard, lost airspeed, stalled one wing. The aircraft snapped inverted and began tumbling. Most bailed out immediately, but Ralph noticed something in the survival accounts. The few pilots who recovered described doing nothing. They stopped fighting the controls. They waited. And sometimes, not always, the lightning sorted itself out. Ralph filed that detail away. It happened on a Tuesday. Clear sky, light chop. Ralph was flying solo aerobatics at 18,000 feet. His mission profile called for loops, rolls, and Immelman turns. He was practicing energy management, trading speed for altitude and back, learning to feel the edge of the envelope without crossing it. He entered a slow roll at 250 knots. Smooth application of aileron. The horizon rotated. He held the roll, inverted, watching the Mojave spin below. Then the airspeed bled off faster than expected. The nose dropped. He corrected with back pressure on the yoke. Too much. The wing stalled. The P-38 snapped left. The world tumbled. Instrument panel, sky, desert, sky. The spin developed instantly. Ralph felt the sickening rotation, the G-forces shoving him sideways in the harness. His inner ear screamed. He instinctively jammed right rudder. Nothing. The spin accelerated. The altimeter unwound. 17,000 feet. 16,000. Doctrine said bail out. Ralph's hand moved toward the canopy release. Then he stopped. He thought about the survival reports. The pilots who did nothing. He released the yoke. Neutral stick. Neutral rudder. Both throttles to idle. The lightning continued spinning. 15,000 feet. 14,000. The desert filled his vision. He forced himself to wait. The spin felt eternal. His stomach knotted. Sweat soaked his collar despite the cold at altitude. Then he felt it. A slight change in the rotation. The nose dipped lower. The spin slowed. Not stopped. Slowed. Ralph didn't move. He let the aircraft fall. 13,000 feet. The spin transitioned from flat to nose down. Airspeed began building. The rudder regained authority. Ralph applied gentle opposite rudder. The rotation stopped. He eased back on the yoke. The horizon leveled. He was flying again. His hands shook. His breathing came fast. He checked his altitude. 11,000 feet. He'd lost 7,000 feet in the spin and recovery. If he'd been lower, he'd be dead. But he wasn't. He'd recovered. Not by fighting. By gliding. Ralph leveled off and circled. His pulse slowed. His mind shifted from survival to analysis. He replayed the sequence, the stall, the snap, the initial acceleration of the spin when he added rudder, then the stabilization when he released the controls, the slow transition to a nose-down attitude as the aircraft found its natural falling posture, the return of airflow over the control surfaces. He saw it now. Fighting the spin disrupted the airflow further. Doing nothing allowed the aircraft to fall into a configuration where the controls worked again. He didn't report it immediately. He wanted to be sure. Doctrine was doctrine for a reason. One survival could be lost. "15 seconds. 20. Then the nose dropped. Airspeed built. Rudder authority returned. He recovered. Again. Ralph landed and sat in the cockpit for a long moment. Crew chiefs approached, asking if everything was okay. He nodded. He signed off the aircraft and walked to the operations building. He didn't mention the spins. Not yet. He needed to understand why it worked before he told anyone. Over the next 2 weeks, Ralph tested his theory whenever he flew solo. He varied altitude, airspeed, and spin entry technique. He entered spins from slow rolls, from snap turns, from accelerated stalls. Every time, he followed the same procedure. Release the controls. Let the aircraft fall. Wait for the aerodynamic transition, then recover gently. It worked every time. The recovery altitude varied. Sometimes he lost 3,000 feet, sometimes 6. But the lightning always came out. He began to see the logic. The P-38's twin-boom design made it aerodynamically unstable in a spin, but that instability was the key. The aircraft didn't want to spin. It wanted to fall nose down, engines forward, into clean airflow. Fighting the spin with opposite rudder or asymmetric thrust disrupted the transition. The controls themselves were the problem. Neutralizing them allowed the airframe's natural tendency to reassert itself. It was counterintuitive. Every instinct said fight, but the solution was surrender. Ralph also discovered something else. In the moments before recovery, the P-38 rotated slowly enough that he could control the exit heading. A slight nudge of rudder just as airspeed built would swing the nose left or right. He practiced it. Enter a spin. Wait for the transition. Nudge the rudder. Exit 90 degrees off the entry heading, then 180 degrees. He was using the spin as a tactical maneuver. He mentioned it casually to another cadet during a flight line conversation. The cadet looked at him like he'd gone mad. "You're deliberately spinning a P-38?" Ralph shrugged. "I'm recovering from spins. There's a difference." The cadet walked away, but a crew chief overheard. The crew chief told an instructor. The instructor summoned Ralph. The meeting was tense. The instructor, a captain with combat time in North Africa, listened without interrupting. Ralph explained the technique. Neutral controls. Idle power. Wait for the nose to drop. Recover gently. The captain frowned. "That contradicts every spin recovery procedure in the manual." Ralph nodded. "I know. But it works." The captain asked if Ralph had mastered any of this. Ralph shook his head. "I've been testing it. I wanted to be sure before I said anything." The captain told him to stop. Immediately. Deliberate spins violated training protocols. If Ralph wanted to pursue this, he needed to go through proper channels. Write a report. Submit it to the chief flight instructor. Let the test pilots evaluate it. Ralph agreed, but he didn't stop flying. And he didn't stop testing. He wrote the report over 3 nights. He included entry conditions, spin characteristics, recovery procedures, and altitude loss data. He drew diagrams showing control inputs and aircraft attitude throughout the sequence. He noted that neutral controls allowed the P-38 to transition from a flat spin to a nose-down spiral, restoring airflow over the rudder and elevator. He calculated average recovery altitudes and suggested a minimum safe altitude for attempting the technique. He kept the tone factual, clinical. No drama, just observations and data. The chief flight instructor read it, then forwarded it to Lockheed's test pilot liaison at Muroc. The test pilot, a civilian named Milo Bersham, asked to meet Ralph. They sat in a briefing room, the report between them. Bersham asked Ralph to walk him through the procedures step by step. Ralph did. Bersham asked about variations, different spin directions, inverted entries, engine out scenarios. Ralph answered each question with specificity. Bersham sat back. "You've been doing this solo, at altitude, without chase plane or safety observer?" Ralph nodded. "Yes, sir." Bersham didn't smile. "You're either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both. But if you're right, this could save lives. Bersham arranged a demonstration flight. Ralph would fly with an experienced test pilot in chase, at altitude, over the dry lake bed. If Ralph's technique worked, they'd document it. If it failed, the chase pilot would confirm when Ralph bailed out. Ralph agreed. The flight was scheduled for March 9th. The morning came cold and clear. Ralph pre-flight the P-38 with extra care. He checked control surface movement, verified fuel loads, tested throttle response. Burkham briefed him on radio procedures and abort criteria. If anything felt wrong, bail out. Don't be a hero. Ralph nodded. He strapped in. The Allisons coughed to life. He taxied out, the chase plane close behind. They climbed to 20,000 feet. Ralph radioed that he was beginning the test. Bersham acknowledged. Ralph reduced power, pulled back on the yoke. The Lightning stalled. He kicked left rudder. The spin began. The horizon spun. Once, twice. He released the controls. Idle throttles. He fell. The spin continued. 10 seconds. 15. His heartbeat thudded in his ears. Then the nose dropped. Airflow returned. He added gentle, opposite rudder. The spin stopped. He recovered level. Bercham's voice crackled over the radio. Clean recovery. Again. Ralph repeated it. Right hand spin this time. Same procedure, same result. Then a third, entering from inverted flight. Each time, the P-38 recovered. Each time, Burkham confirmed. After the fifth spin, Burkham called it, "That's enough. Bring it home." Ralph descended, his hands steady, his mind clear. He'd proven it. Lockheed issued a technical bulletin within 2 weeks. It didn't mention Ralph by name. It outlined a revised spin recovery procedure for the P-38. Neutralize all controls, reduce throttles to idle, allow the aircraft to transition to a nose-down attitude, then apply gentle opposite rudder and ease out of the dive. Minimum recovery altitude, 8,000 feet above ground level. The bulletin went to every P-38 unit in the Army Air Forces. Training commands updated their syllabi. Spin recovery became part of advanced P-38 instruction. Cadets practiced it under supervision, at altitude, with chase planes standing by. Accident rates dropped, not eliminated. Spins still killed pilots who entered them too low or panicked, but the survival rate improved measurably. Pilots who once would have bailed out now had a second option. In combat theaters, the technique had a subtler impact. P-38 pilots began using intentional spins as evasive maneuvers. Bounced by enemy fighters, they'd enter a deliberate spin, dropping several thousand feet in seconds while changing heading. Pursuing aircraft often overshot or lost sight. Once clear, the P-38 pilot recovered and egressed at low altitude. It wasn't a dogfighting tactic, it was an escape. But it worked. Ralph Hofer graduated flight training in April 1943. He deployed to England with the 8th Air Force, assigned to the 4th Fighter Group. He flew P-47 Thunderbolts initially, then transitioned to P-51 Mustangs. He became known for aggressive flying, for pressing attacks when others broke off. His gun camera footage showed kills at ranges so close that debris struck his aircraft. He was fearless. Or maybe he simply understood risk differently. On July 2, 1944, Ralph Hofer was leading a flight near Oschersleben, Germany. His Mustang was hit by flak. Witnesses saw him attempt a forced landing. The aircraft crashed. He did not survive. He was 20 years old. By then, he'd been credited with 15 aerial victories, though some historians believe the true number was higher. His name appears on the wall of the missing at the Netherlands American Cemetery. But the spin recovery technique outlived him. Post-war, it was refined and incorporated into jet fighter training. The principle, neutralizing controls to allow natural aerodynamic recovery, became foundational in spin instruction across all aircraft types. Test pilots at Edwards Air Force Base cited the P-38 procedure when developing recovery techniques for the F-86 Sabre. and later, Century Series fighters. The logic Ralph discovered at 18 influenced flight training for generations. Crew chiefs at Muroc kept a logbook of unusual fixes and field innovations. Ralph's name appears in one entry, dated March 1943. Cadet Hofer demonstrated spin recovery procedure. Aircraft recovered without incident. Technique recommended for evaluation. It's a single line, no elaboration, but it marks the moment when one pilot's curiosity turned lethal instability into survivable aerodynamics. In 1952, the Air Force published a comprehensive study on fighter spin characteristics. The section on the P-38 included a footnote. It referenced a field procedure developed during wartime training, noting that the technique contradicted conventional doctrine, but proved effective in practice. The footnote didn't name Ralph Hofer. By then, the institutional memory had faded. The technique was simply part of the curriculum, its origin lost to bureaucracy and time. But the mechanics remembered. Old crew chiefs, retired by the 50s, told stories at reunions. They remembered the farm kid who asked too many questions, the cadet who walked the flight line at dawn, sketching diagrams, thinking through problems no one else wanted to touch. They remembered the day he proved that falling could be safer than fighting. Aviation is built on moments like this. Not grand theories or billion-dollar programs, but individuals who notice what others miss, who test assumptions, who risk themselves to verify intuition. Ralph Hofer didn't invent aerodynamics. He didn't redesign the P-38. He simply observed, experimented, and trusted logic over fear. The P-38 went on to serve throughout the war. It escorted bombers over Europe. It hunted submarines in the Pacific. It shot down more Japanese aircraft than any other fighter in the theater. Pilots loved it and cursed it in equal measure. It was fast, powerful, complex, and unforgiving. But after March 1943, it was a little less deadly to its own pilots. There is a photograph of Ralph Hofer, taken sometime in early 1944. He stands beside a P-51 Mustang, parachute harness loose around his shoulders, face shadowed by the wing. He looks young, impossibly young, but his eyes are focused, measuring something beyond the camera's frame. He's thinking. Always thinking. He never wrote a memoir. He left no letters philosophizing about courage or innovation. He simply flew, tested, and moved on to the next problem. His legacy is a procedure buried in training manuals, a footnote in a technical study, a single line in a crew chief's logbook, and thousands of pilots who recovered from spins they once would not have survived. In the end, Ralph Hofer's contribution wasn't a weapon or a tactic. It was a gift of time, the seconds between panic and death, the altitude between instinct and impact. He showed that sometimes survival means letting go, that sometimes the answer isn't force, but patience, that the sky forgives those who understand it, even when it kills those who fight it. The P-38, lightning is gone now, except in museums and air shows, but the lesson remains. Trust the physics. Wait for the transition. Let the aircraft tell you what it needs. And when the world spins out of control, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is nothing at all, until the moment you can do everything.